Hello and welcome to video one of two videos all about how to create a one-year teaching plan for your youth ministry. My name is Nick Diliberto and I am the creator of Ministry to Youth. Launched it way back in 2014. And I'm excited about just jumping ahead and just getting started in this training because I think you're going to learn a lot. So the first thing that's important to think about whenever you're coming up with a one-year teaching plan for your youth ministry is this. It's really important that you set goals or objectives or targets or whatever you want to call it. Only a few of them. And when you do this, you're just thinking through the entire year of what is it that I want to accomplish on my weekend services or your weekend services or whatever you're using your teaching plan for. Okay, so that's going to be really important. But I think it's also, before we dive into that part of it, I think it's really important for you to understand what your role is and what God's role is. And this is, if anything, for you church leaders, this is just a reminder. So let's see. I think it was summertime. We moved from New Orleans to San Diego, currently live in San Diego. And when we moved here, I didn't realize that I inherited a really large garden. Now, if you know anything about me, I am not very good at keeping a garden or watering or anything like that. So I quickly realized that really, all that I had to do was make sure that it's watered, make sure it has the right soil, make sure that it's pruned, and make sure that really I do everything to create the right environment for the plants to do their thing, right? So because I'm not very good at it, I did a little bit of it myself, and then I'm like, I need to hire some gardeners who know what they're doing. And the gardeners told me about the watering cycle, told me about different plants and how much water each of them needs. And he told me all about the soil and fertilizer and all these things that I had absolutely no clue of because I've really never taken care of a garden before. And I think that's a really great illustration of what our role is as youth ministry leaders, because your job is to provide the right environment and let the natural process just unfold. So like that was my job as the person who owned the garden, just provide the right environment for the plants to grow and let the natural process unfold. So for you, really your job is to create a healthy environment in your youth ministry and let God do the rest. So I know it's a basic truth, but as youth leaders, we can lose sight of it in the day-to-day hustle and bustle of youth ministry, right? You know, everything that we're going to talk about today, it's going to be all about how you can create a healthy environment in your youth ministry so that God can do what God does, which is draw people to Him, draw students into a relationship with Him. So the first step in creating a healthy environment for your youth ministry is to come up with a few and only like maybe 2 or 3 goals that you want to accomplish with your teaching plan throughout the year. Okay. Now, again, you're going to be creating the right environment and just allowing God do the rest. But what I want to do is just ask you a question and take a few seconds as I'm going through this to think through what one thing would you like to see happen in the lives of your students in the next year? What one thing? So maybe it's to point students to Jesus and for them to come into a relationship with Him. Or maybe it's for them to really dive into the Bible and begin to apply that in their lives. It could be for them to, I did a version of this, what I'm doing right now, live on Facebook earlier today, and some of the responses that I got back were for students to develop empathy, for them to develop a prayer life, or for them to really dive into God's Word. So what one thing would you like to see happen in your youth ministry right now? What is that? I just want you to keep that in mind as we're going throughout all this process. So what you're going to do is you're going to come up with 2 to 3 goals that you want to accomplish with your teaching plan throughout the year. And when you do that, there's a few things that you're going to run into when you're actually trying to do that, because that's going to be your starting point. It's going to be your starting point. And then from there, what you're going to do is you're going to create a scope and sequence for an entire year. But there are some problems that I'd like to go through with you that youth ministry leaders, myself included, we run into when it comes to setting goals for like our teaching plan throughout the year. Problem number one is setting too many goals. Research shows that those who set more than a few goals in anything, in any area of life, rarely accomplish any of them. But those that set only a few goals are likely to achieve them. So that's why I think it's really important for you to identify just a few goals, right? The fewer, the better, because the fewer you have, the more focused you're going to be on those particular objectives that you're trying to create. So problem number one is setting too many goals. And then that was problem number one. Problem number two is not setting any goals. I mean, I want you to imagine, what would it be like to play basketball or to watch a basketball game with no goals? Like people are shooting the ball and there's no goal for them to aim at. It would be absolutely crazy and insane, right? It would not be very enjoyable to play or to watch. And I think what happens is us youth ministry leaders, we're sometimes apprehensive about setting goals because we don't feel comfortable with what I like to call result-driven goals, right? So a good example of result-driven goal would be, okay, my goal is for 20 students to surrender their lives to Jesus this month or this quarter or this year. Well, the truth is we really don't have any control of that outcome, but what we do have control over is the times throughout the year that we're very intentional and we're thinking of it, in advance, it's strategic, it's well thought out. You can control how many times you present that opportunity to students. That's you creating the right environment. And then however many students respond really isn't up to you. That's up to God. So I think when we don't set goals as a youth ministry leader, it's because, we just feel uncomfortable about these results-driven goals. And I'm here to tell you that you don't have to set those kind of goals. You just set goals to help you set up the right environment for God to do what he's going to do. So we'll dive into exactly how to put that through in a scope and sequence in part two. In part one, we're just talking about this. Okay, so it's bottom line, it's important to set goals in your youth ministry. Okay, so problem number three. So just reviewing, problem number one is setting too many goals for you type A driven people like me. Problem number two, not setting any goals. And then problem number three is not being flexible. See, it's really important when you're planning your whole year out ahead of time to, first of all, just take the time to do it. We'll talk more about that in part two, but you want to just set aside a chunk of time to do it. But just because you're planning ahead doesn't mean that you're not flexible. Be open to pivoting and changing things throughout the year. A good example of this is if you had a year plan last year for 2020 and then the pandemic hits, well, you have to be flexible enough to pivot and change. Or maybe what happens is a tragedy happens in your community and it's like, hey, I need to address this. So planning ahead doesn't mean that you're inflexible. It means that you are just thinking ahead, you're strategic, you're intentional, but you also leave some room to be flexible. Okay, so problem number 4 is not tracking your progress. Okay, so once you set goals, once you have a year plan, scope and sequence all mapped out, a lot of times what we do is when we set these goals, we don't track the progress and we just set the goals and then we just kind of keep on going. But I think it's important to track your progress. So I'll give you a really good example of this. If one of your goals is for students to get rooted in the Bible, then on a regular basis, what you're doing is you're evaluating how well you're creating the opportunity for students to get rooted in the Bible. So the questions that you'd be asking yourself is, am I going through a book of the Bible in depth, chapter by chapter, verse by verse? Is that something that I'm doing? And if so, when? Another question you'd be asking yourself is, hey, am I challenging students to read the Bible on their own? And am I providing an opportunity for them to follow up with people and be accountable to people? So you're just checking in. Now, you can't control how many students are going to be actually, rooting themselves in the Bible. You can't control that, but you can control what you're doing to give them that opportunity and provide follow-up and accountability. So, all right, I'll review these 4 again. Number 1, setting too many goals. Number 2, not setting any goals. And then number 3, not being flexible. And then number 4, not tracking your progress. So what I'd like to just ask yourself, or I'd like to ask you, and for you to just take a minute and pause, is which one of these 4 problems resonates with you the most? Which one? I'm sure one of them sort of like registers with you. So I think it's important to just pay attention to that. So when you're setting goals, you're trying to think of, hey, what is it that I want to accomplish with my teaching plan? Because then when you create your scope and sequence, everything is driven from that. And you're only focusing on a few of them. You're thinking ahead, you're praying, you're talking to your team, and you're brainstorming ideas. The key principle to walk away here with is plan ahead, be intentional, and then let your goals, your objectives, drive your one-year teaching plan. So what I'd like to do is just give you an example of what this might look like in your youth ministry. And what I'm going to do is use the exclusive youth curriculum that we have available as a working example. It just gives us something concrete to work with. And when you're going through this process for yourself, what you're going to do is think of your own goals. Or maybe, our youth curriculum might resonate with you. And if it does, then I'll give you a link and you can get more information about that. But the 4 goals that we have for our exclusive youth curriculum: number 1, students who don't know Jesus would come into a relationship with him. Number 2, students would become biblically rooted. Number 3, we would give students a strategic path to discipleship. And then number 4, you would give the opportunity for students to develop God-centered relationships. So that's what it looks like for our exclusive youth curriculum. And then it's your job to take, those goals, whatever your goals are, and then use it as basically the foundation for your one-year teaching plan, which is what we've done with the exclusive youth curriculum. We've taken those 4 goals and we have created basically a one-year curriculum where you get 52 weeks of teaching lessons, 52 weeks of small group lessons, and then we also give you 4 youth ministry trainings 4 youth ministry events and 6 youth ministry trainings for you and your volunteers. So it's kind of like an all-inclusive package, and you get everything is designed from that framework. So here's the thing. Maybe the exclusive youth curriculum works for you. You can check it out. Wherever you're watching this video right now, there'll be a link below the video to get more information about the exclusive youth curriculum, because maybe you're like, hey, you know what? This really resonates with me. I can check it out. And then you have 1 year of youth ministry totally done for you. And the other thing about the exclusive youth curriculum is that we do have a second round of bonuses that are happening if you purchase it on Wednesday when we're releasing this video, Wednesday, April 14th, all the way through the day. And then we'll have a third round of bonuses that will be launching on April 15th and then wrapping up on April 22nd. And then after that third round of bonuses, which is not as good as the second round, Second round of bonuses, what you see on Wednesday right now is the best you can get right now. And then the third round, 15th through the 22nd, you still do get some bonuses. You can get the full details about that at ministry2youth.com/exclusive. Maybe that'll be a good fit for you, and you can check that out. If it's not a good fit for you, then what I'm going to encourage you to do is go ahead and take the time. Like, I'm just about done in this video because the second part of this video, which I will post on Thursday, April 15th, you'll get it in your email if you sign up for our email list. If not, we'll post it on Ministry Youth or ministryyouth.com/blog. That's where our blog feed is. And you can check it out there. And in that video, I'm going to say, okay, now that you've written your goals down, you've kind of worked through those problems that I talked about, and you're like locked and loaded on 2 or 3 objectives that you want to see happen this year. Then I'm going to talk to you and give you a good framework, a blueprint that you can use to, come up with your own teaching plan for an entire year with room for flexibility. And it's going to be doable because really you're looking at the whole year, and you're going to get the broad view for the whole year. And then as you get closer to whatever you're working on each week, it's going to be more defined. So I don't want to jump ahead and get into that, but we will release that video on Thursday. You can check that out. And I think that's just about it. So I thought about putting this video out in one video, but then I was like, you know what? I really feel like it's important to do part 1 and part 2, because what that gives you the opportunity to do right now is stop this video and then just take a few minutes and just write down what transformation you'd like to see happen in the lives of your students. What 2 or 3 things in a year's time, if you gave students the opportunity for their lives to be transformed in that way, that would be a win for you. Okay, so you do that now. Take time to do that. And then while you're doing that, go ahead and check out the exclusive youth curriculum and take advantage of all of those bonuses. Hey, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch this video. And I thought that and I'm grateful, my brain's not working. I'm grateful that you took the time to watch the video. Thanks very much, and be on the lookout for part 2 coming tomorrow.